And we are live. Good morning. Friday morning. Flex those muscles. September 16th, 2016, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. If you're in some other time zone, do the math. We have a very, I think, exciting and special program planned for you today. We're talking about workflow optimization. And judging by the overwhelming response in the form of registrations for today's webinar, as we were discussing before we went live, I'm guessing this is a hot topic for a lot of people, something a lot of people would like help with. So I'm going to get pretty much right into it. There were a number of questions people asked during registration, which were some great questions. The way I'm going to approach this week, especially because I have a lot of ground to cover, and also looking at the questions, I believe I'm going to wind up answering most, if not all of them, between now and the end of the hour. And what I'll do is at 9 a.m. my time, just at the end of the webinar, I'll comb through the questions. Those of you who want to stick around for an extra 5 minutes, I'll be happy to make sure that I've answered any questions that have gone unanswered up to that point. Sound fair? Perfect. For those of you joining in late as viewers, I may or may not get back over there to let you in. I'm letting the last few people in right now. I will do my best. A couple of other ground rules. The chat. I am not going to have time to pay attention to the chat. Erica, if you would, please help me out with that where you can. But two important rules. I think there's two in here. One, if you have a question, then please ask it in the chat. The better thing to do is just unmute and interrupt me. Because like I said, I'm not going to necessarily be able to focus too much on the chat this morning. However, or actually in addition to that, if you have a question, ask it. If you're in the chat and you're just going to rant about something, I can't acknowledge that. I can't respond to that. I can't help somebody with just a rant where you're just complaining about something. If you have a question, I'm so happy to answer it, and I hope you do. I hope you have a lot of questions, because that is what I feel kind of creates the best content, is when I get to interact with all of you and get your questions answered quickly and succinctly and all of that. So,
I have a question already, Seth.
Okay, go ahead.
You mentioned Erica was with us. Where is she? I don't see her.
Unless she dropped off, she should be in here. Here you are.
Oh, hi, Erica. So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too. I had to drop off for a second. I was not connecting very well with y'all.
I hate when that happens. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to do it. I actually have an outline prepared for you this week. I wanted to make sure I could give you the best. And thank you, Laura from Long Island, for that rant in the chat. Okay, so actually, before I share my screen, let's talk about some things at a high level. We're talking about workflow. We're talking about optimizing that workflow, which means this morning I'm going to be talking about 17 hats. I'm going to be talking about Evernote. I'm going to be talking about Active Collab and Smartsheet. And we're going to look at the CRM that I like to use. Now, in the past, I've done these, what I used to call practice development deep dives with people, excuse me, one-on-one. You'd sign up for, at the time, it was like 4.5 hours basically worth of one-on-one time. And I'd work with people. Some of you actually have probably taken advantage of this. And I would show you an array of applications. And I would talk to you about your practice, figure out what problems you were trying to solve. And what I was finding was that I think I was leaving some people even more confused than they were before with all the choices. So what I've begun to do this year, especially, and what I'm going to do here, is that I am going to show you the apps that I've settled in on, that I use for myself. And this is what I use, and this is what works really well for me. And a lot of times, there's going to be 10 other choices out there that are going to work just as well for you in your business. So just because I'm showing you an app doesn't mean it's the only choice. It just means this is what I've settled in on, and this is what I can help you with. I can help you with the other apps too. The reality is I've played with them all. Maybe not all of them, but probably close to that. And I've beaten these things up to try and see, where can I get these things to break? Where can I make these apps crash if possible? Where can I get them to fail so I can figure out where the limitations are, and then what kind of workarounds we might need to get around those things, right? So I just want to kind of give you that context, that just because I'm showing you what I'm showing you here today doesn't mean these are the only answers. It just means that these are my answers that I've come up with to solve the problems that I've encountered both for myself and for clients of mine. So, depending on what you're trying to optimize, and and what you're trying to do. There may be any number of different tools to use. The first rule is you have to get over any fear you may have of apps. You can't be afraid of apps. When I was a kid, my father had a toolbox, and my father wasn't like a handyman or anything, but he was handy around the house. He would fix things, and he had probably 100 tools in that toolbox, and he knew how to use them all. And when a new problem came up that he didn't have a tool for, he would go to the store and buy the tool, and he'd learn how to use it. And that's kind of what we have to do here. We have to fill up our toolbox with these applications so that we have the right tool to fix the right problem when the need arises. And usually it's force of need that gets us to go research and find that tool, right? So and that's probably the best approach. If you go into apps.com on, and try and research all the apps that are out there for QuickBooks Online, you're probably going to overwhelm yourself. So you kind of start outlining, where do I see friction in my business? Where do I see friction in my practice? Where are things bottlenecking? And those are pretty good indicators of where you need to find a solution to get something done better, faster, more efficiently, right? The name of the game is to free up more time so you can get more done and have more fun, bottom line. So the other day, in fact, I did a video in response to an article from Gene Marks. Some of you may have seen it. He talked about important numbers every business owner should have in their head, especially when they go into meetings, and how successful business owners always have these kind of numbers in their head. And it was a great article, and it was very true. And he even went on to say, does this mean if you don't have a good head for numbers that you're screwed? And the answer was no, but you may be at a disadvantage, and you may need to employ the right help so that you could get, so that you could have those numbers available to you and have somebody there in your world who can help you understand and identify what you need to know when you're going into, say, important meetings. And in my sort of video response to his article, I went on to describe how you don't necessarily need to have the numbers in your head. If you don't have a good head for numbers, you just need the right tools. And I did a demonstration, and this is one of the more recent posts on SethDavid.com. So right on the home page, scroll down, you'll see it in the recent feed. And I go through how you can go into QuickBooks Online. You can run the reports that you need to get the information at a high level, your balance sheet, your profit and loss, and any detailed reports that you need. You can automate the sending of those reports to yourself or to your client. And then I showed you how in well under 5 minutes, you can take those reports from Excel, get them into Google Drive, convert them to a Google Sheet, and star them so that in a flash they're available on my mobile device when I need them. And then I also went on to show you how at the bottom of the balance sheet, I just started you off to give you some ideas and get the juices flowing about how you could start calculating things like the current ratio, right? And start looking at some of these analytics that we need to start looking at more and more for ourselves and our clients. So that video, I think, is a really good example of what I'm about to kind of show you in a few different ways throughout the rest of today's hour. So here's what...
I'm sorry to interrupt. I haven't watched that video yet, but I do plan on watching it. I'm wondering if there's a way to update the Google Sheet so that you don't have to change the calculations every time.
Yeah, you can create a template, and I discussed that in the video.
Okay,
I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on that, but absolutely, you can create a template. The only challenge you have is if your chart of accounts changes, then that's going to throw you off in terms of the lines, but a whole different discussion for another day. So here's what you're going to get out of the rest of this hour. I obviously can't solve all your problems today. If you sign up for one-on-one with me, we can tackle your problems one at a time. And I have a surprise for you all at the end, by the way. So stick around for the whole hour because I think you're going to like what I'm going to present to you right at the end of the hour. I'm going to show you how I solve common workflow problems. I'll show you how I do my onboarding with 17 Hats. I'll show you how I use 17 Hats to handle lead generation and some other workflow problems. I'll show you my email process with Evernote. Some of you may have seen that already. I've done several videos on it, but in case you missed them, I'll give you a quick review. I'll show you, I know a lot of you use Boomerang for that kind of process. I'm going to explain to you why I'm not a fan of Boomerang. I'm going to give you, I think, 2 reasons at least why I prefer my method over Boomerang. Doesn't mean you shouldn't use Boomerang. If you're using Boomerang and it's working for you, that's the golden rule. If what you're doing is working for you, don't change a thing. Right? I think that's really, really important. My way is not the only way. It's not my way or the highway here. It's what's working is what matters. That's the ultimate barometer for all of this kind of stuff. Okay, and then we're going to look at how I handle tasks in 2 different applications. And like I said earlier, I swear I played with them all. And I've narrowed it down to the 2. And why not just 1? As always, the right tool for the right job. I probably could use more than 2, depending on what kind of information needs to be tracked, and that depends on the business. 1 may be better than the other. And just case in point, I recently started with a client on Active Collab, but as we got deeper into what they needed, and they had a lot of detailed, sort of customized information that really needed to be tracked, ultimately we decided to go with Smartsheet. And Smartsheet is working beautifully for them. I had a meeting with her earlier this week in which she told me my employees love Smartsheet. I'm loving Smartsheet. She was so happy that I introduced her to that tool. And so those are the tools, the 2 sort of project task management tools I'm going to show you this morning is 17 Hats, and it's not 17 Hats, Smartsheet and Active Collab. All right, time to take a breath. I told you I could speak the whole hour in 1 breath. All right, now I'm going to share any questions before I share my screen? All right, let's do this. Desktop 1. All right, and I'm just going to minimize my picture of the camera. So now I definitely cannot see what's going on in the chat. So the only way you're getting my attention is to unmute and speak up. Erica, do we have any questions in the chat?
My chat went away. Hang on a sec. Not yet. We're good.
Good. What you're looking at here is the first workflow tool that I use and look at every single morning, the first thing when I come to my computer. And that's my bookmarks in Chrome. I recently discovered that it seems not a lot of you have a process around this, and this is probably the first thing that needs to be sort of organized, right? Because before I can get into all my tools, I need to know that I can find and access them in 30 seconds or less, right? It should be a lot less than 30 seconds. So, and this came up because a few months ago, somebody asked me, do I have a list of the apps that I use every single day? And the answer is yes. That's right here in this bookmark folder called The Office. Okay, now, and truth be told, I don't actually use all of these apps every day, but these are the common ones that I use. Asana, I've stopped using in favor of Active Collab, but I was playing with Asana every day for a while, and I was testing them both. I put a few clients' tasks in Asana. These weren't situations where I was collaborating with the client. It was just, clients where I needed to track for myself what needed to be done. And I tested Asana out, and I hated Asana a long time ago. They changed the interface. I liked it a lot better. But ultimately, and here's the test on these applications, and here's how you can test them. Ultimately, I found that as I accumulated a lot of stuff in Asana, even though they do have some pretty powerful search queries and things that you can do, I still found it much easier to find what I needed in Active Collab. So again, and I say again because I mentioned it earlier, ultimately I've settled in on really 2 applications for task management, primarily Active Collab and Smartsheet, which you can see down here. Scalus is another one I was testing out. I love Scalus for a lot of reasons in a lot of ways, but ultimately I found Active Collab worked better for me. So that's what I settled in on. But right now, before we get into those applications, the bookmarks might be the most critically important thing to your workflow to make sure that you have quick and easy access to whatever you need. And by the way, I'm using Chrome, which means the Chrome browser on my mobile device is completely synced up. I have these exact same bookmarks here. And if I add something to this, the next time I go into my mobile device, it's going to show up there in my bookmarks, which means I have, again, workflow, optimization, efficiency, speed. I can get what I need to quickly no matter where I am. And that's really, 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 really important to me, right? As soon as I find myself struggling to find something, I have a rule about that. If I can't find it in 30 seconds or less, then it's not organized. And as soon as I do find it, I need to reorganize it before I do anything else. And usually the way I gauge that is, where was the first place I went to look for the thing? Because that's probably a good indication of where it belongs, right? The first place I go to look for something, if it's not there, that's where it should be. Excuse me. So how do you set up these bookmarks? Pretty easy. If I'm in my Google Calendar, for example, which is another thing I want to talk to you about, you click this little star. And this little star bookmarks it. I have a feeling it didn't show up already starred because it's looking at a very particular view that maybe isn't exactly how I bookmarked it, because it's got this, it's rendered based on how I've set up my Chrome browser to open up with certain tabs. So it's got language here in the URL that says render tab equals, main 7. So it's one of the main tabs that I've configured Chrome to open up every day, which is something I want to show you now. So like I said, I have the Office folder, which has all the things that I use regularly. And by the way, if I want to have the same bookmark essentially in 2 folders, all you do is right-click, copy, and go into the other folder where you want it, and right-click, and paste will be lit up once you've copied something, of course. Right? So just like copying and pasting a file in a Windows Explorer folder or in your Finder window on a Mac, it's very easy to copy and paste this stuff. And yes, I do sometimes have them in more than one place. The Office, like I said, is kind of that compilation of applications I use frequently or want to be using frequently. And then the bigger picture, sort of more permanent storage, is here in Services. And what happened was initially everything was just in Services, but I started accumulating so many things that I said I need to break this down and organize it better. So I broke it down: accounting, banking, which is just bank accounts that I or my clients bank with that I need to access often. CDNs or content delivery networks. My communications apps, right? My Gmail, so again, Gmail is going to show up in several places. And the logic behind that, by the way, is at any given time I might be looking for it from a different place. Right? The place I most often go to open up my Gmail is I go to Services and then Communications, and I know Gmail is in there. Eventually, I just train my brain to go there. So it's really important, I think, to have this kind of workflow set up before you even get into your apps. How are you going to access your apps, and where are you going to go to find them? So you don't have to sit there searching Google. I've watched clients, I remote in with a lot of people every single day, right? That's most of what I do for a living, is logging in remotely with people and helping them with setting up these kinds of workflows, as well as, of course, QuickBooks and, getting into other applications and how to use them. And so I watch very closely. I pay attention to people's behavior. Most people, when they log into QuickBooks Online, are just opening up a new tab and doing a Google search for QuickBooks Online and going to log in. And it may seem silly. Maybe it doesn't. To me, it doesn't. But, little things like that slow me down, right? I want a quick way to do it. I even set up, as some of you have probably seen, on SethDavid.com, there's a link that says useful links and resources. And right there, I've got the link both to the QuickBooks Online test drive and the QuickBooks Online login. And I provide that as kind of a resource for you, but I actually use it a lot myself in addition to having it bookmarked here. So get your bookmarks down. That's going to make a big difference in your workflow right then and there. And I was surprised to find out when I showed this to people a couple of months ago, how many people commented to me saying, oh, I need to do that. And I was honestly very surprised that, to me, this came very naturally. I figured it did for everybody. I was surprised to find out that people actually, were asking for my help with this kind of stuff specifically. And it's not a judgment. Like I said, I was just surprised now that I think about it. It's like, okay, so not everybody's brain works the way mine does. And I pray that yours doesn't work the way mine does. So let's go into settings here. Chrome has this little hamburger menu, and I highly recommend Chrome, whether you're on a Mac or a PC. It just works everywhere, and it works seamlessly across the board. And if we're all QuickBooks Online users, then you already know QuickBooks Online is built very specifically with Chrome in mind, so that it just works better in Chrome than any of the other browsers. If I go on this hamburger menu and click down here on Settings, here's another workflow. So right over here on Startup, open a specific page or set of pages. So what I do every once in a while, if I want to change this, is I open up all the tabs that I want to have open the minute I open up Chrome every day. The first thing, of course, is I want my bookmarks open. I need my calendar, Google Keep. I keep a lot of, that's my digital sticky note app, Active Collab, Nimble, and this is a goal sheet that I have. Those of you who are in the 97 and up program are about to get exposed to this. I'm going to be rolling out section 1, I'm pretty sure, next week, and you're going to see how this all comes into being. But it's my goal sheet. It's the first thing I want to see every day that shows me, here's what your goal is for today. Here's how much business I want to do, and I have it broken down to a daily number. So I stay focused on that daily number, and if I find I'm screwing around somewhere else, speaking of workflow and staying focused, which is a big part of this, if I find I'm screwing around on Facebook and not doing something productive there, it's a quick question. Have I met that goal yet for today? If not, then stop what you're doing and get focused on what you need to do to bring yourself closer to that goal.
Hey, Seth, I have a quick question. Is there a way to open up in incognito mode from the startup?
I don't believe so, because I don't believe you can set a preset set of pages in incognito mode. And that's the whole point of incognito, is it sets a dividing line between anything that would be memorized or cached in your browser. So I think almost by definition you couldn't do that. I could be wrong. I haven't tried it.
Okay.
So once you've got those pages open, those tabs open, regardless of what's here now, if you click Use Current Pages, it's going to immediately update this with whatever tabs you have open. So open up the tabs first that you know you want to look at first thing every day when you first open up your browser, and click Use Current Pages. And can anybody tell me, hopefully some of you have noticed what's not here? I'll give you a few seconds to think about it and unmute and chime in. This is really important. That's why I want to drive this point home by doing it this way. I don't want to just tell you. Nobody can figure out what's not here.
Google
Right.
Drive.
Book,
Email.
not email.
My email is not here. Email is the worst distraction, like ever. I do not open my email first thing. All right, I'll be totally honest. I do often check my email on my mobile at some point shortly after I've woken up, but I don't dare respond to anything. It's just out of curiosity I look, and mostly what I'm looking for, to be honest, is to see, do I have any new sales? You know, did I have any new money come in overnight? That's the only reason I look. If there's a problem that a client needs solved, I'll see it in the email, and I know I'm going to check the email later. One of the questions I think I remember seeing in registration was, how often do I look at my email? In a perfect day, I try to limit it to just twice a day, sometime around lunchtime and sometime by the end of the day. And I should qualify that really 3 times, because I do, by the time I get to my desk at some point, even though I make it a point not to make it the first thing, I do usually open up my email at some time in the morning before I start my day, go through all the unreads, and make sure there's no fires that need putting out, if you know what I mean. So really it's 3 times a day. It's then, not immediately, but sometime in the morning before I really start, and then sometime around lunch, and then by the end of the day, like, somewhere between 4 and 6 p.m. So Use Current Pages will get you set up so that the next time you open up Chrome, it'll open up all those tabs. And to me, this is a great workflow. And you're looking at the ones that I open up automatically. I do like to see my calendar right away. I like to see, what am I doing today, right? Google Keep, again, those are my digital sticky notes, including my little grocery lists, right? Active Collab opens up because this is where a lot of my projects are managed. Homepage, Nimble CRM, this is what we're going to be looking at in a little bit. And then my daily goals, right? And I gave you a quick glimpse. I'm not going to show you all the details of this, but you can see it's color-coded. It lights things up in yellow for me where I need my attention. That's done in Google Sheets, and it's done with conditional formatting. Again, this is all stuff I can show anybody how to do in a one-on-one. So that's the bookmarks. Now let's get into 17 hats. I want to show you my workflow. And first and foremost, and I'm sorry, but I do feel it would be sort of selling you short not to mention this, I do have a course that goes over in detail what I'm about to show you. I can only show you so much in this hour. The course will walk you through step by step how to set all this up. Today, the best I can really do for you is show you what I've got set up. I can't get too deep into the how of it, if you know what I mean. But if you go into the course directory, you'll find my course on 17 hats. For now, I'll give you the kind of high level. So notice it's in the office, and I bang open 17 hats. And hopefully things don't run too slow. While we're waiting, anybody got a question? I'll take that as a no. LastPass is another important tool I'm not really getting too deeply into today. But while I'm here, let me mention this real quick. A lot of people, first of all, 17 has just recently announced, I think it was just this week, they are coming out with multi-users very soon. But in the meantime, and what I've been doing with Erica is, I love using Google Apps for work for my email and everything else, because one of the things I get to do with that is I can create groups in Google, which act as an email alias. So I've created an email alias that redistributes to both Erica and myself, and that's the email address that we use for my account at 17 Hats, so that anytime a notification goes out from 17 Hats, both Erica and I get that notification. And I think in Erica's case, because I know, love, and trust her for a long, long time now, I think she actually has my my passwords. But if I wanted to with LastPass, I could easily share the access to log into 17 Hats without her ever seeing my password. So LastPass is not something I'm covering today per se, but I wanted to mention that while we're here, because that's a really handy way, and LastPass is going to ask me to log in real quick. That's a really handy way of sharing the access without giving away the passwords.
Seth?
Yes.
Just a quick question on LastPass. Do you know, does the data get backed up, like if you have an iPhone or something, does that get backed up on the cloud, like if you were to get a new phone?
LastPass is entirely on the cloud. It's not on your phone. So the answer is yes. It's all cloud-based. So I could throw this computer away, and as soon as I log into my Chrome browser on the new computer, and I log into my actual Chrome session, then I can go and reinstall the LastPass extension, which is what you're seeing up here.
Okay.
And LastPass has it all stored. That's one of the beauties of it. And one really important thing, because obviously the question of security comes up on that. Last year, there was a hack. Somebody attempted to hack into LastPass. Not one single password was compromised. They claimed that at the beginning. Of course, everybody was skeptical, but it ultimately proved to be true. Not one password got compromised. So that actually helped me trust LastPass that much more. So now, again, there's a lot that I can go into with you on 17 Hats, but for today, I want to stay focused on just kind of the high level. So I'm going into my workflows, and I'm going to go into templates here, and this is where you create your workflows. So first of all, one really simple workflow that I've created, and you obviously have to think of your own version of how you might use something like this in your own case. But I have a lot of templates out there, and years ago I did an inventory template and a series of videos on it that showed you how you can use my template to quickly sort of track and manage your inventory and ultimately post your inventory adjustments back in QuickBooks, because I never liked that physical inventory worksheet that QuickBooks did. And this also gave the ability with the right report out of QuickBooks to really analyze your profit margins by product and, kind of look for where the sort of unsung heroes were. Where were there products that had a high profit margin but low sales volume, so that I could try and exploit those and get them sold more to increase the bottom line. So there's a strategy that I employed, and around it I built this template and then advertised the template. I should have charged for it. It was done in 2009. It was done in April of 2009, and I still get requests every week for it. So what I said was, every time I get these requests, I've got to stop and go attach the template to an email and send it out. And it was a pain, and I would tend to ignore it because it was low priority, because I wasn't getting paid for it, right? But again, I said, it's not right. These people deserve a prompt reply. It's not their fault I decided not to charge for it. So 17 Hats came into the picture, and I figured out a perfect way to deal with this. And what I do is when the request comes in, and it comes in now through 17 Hats, which I'll show you in a second, but when the request comes in, all I have to do is read their comments where I see that they're asking for the template, and I assign this workflow. And the minute I assign this workflow, the first email goes out, which says send email inventory tracking template, right? If I go in and edit this from here, this is just the actual workflow. This is one thing I've talked to 17 Hats about this. It bugs me that I can't get from here to the actual email template, but we'll go there in a second. I want you to see what this looks like under the hood, so to speak. So the first item is send an email. Use this email template, the Seth inventory tracking template email, and send it automatically 0 days after activating. So in other words, the minute I activate it, that email is going to go out. Now let's go look at that email. So let's go to account settings. And we'll go to templates. And we need the Seth inventory tracking template. So I just click on that. And here's the email template. So notice it's using merge tags. I've captured their name through the form that they filled out. So I've got their first name. Might as well make it personal, right? So it's, hey, first name, I'm guessing you caught my video on how to use inventory tracking. The template is attached. I was so excited when I figured out that in an email template, I can have an attachment, there. Right? When I realized that, I said, wow, this solves a huge problem for me. This goes back to what I was saying earlier. Where do you need better workflow optimization? Where you're finding friction? One of my frictions was when I got these requests, I needed to stop and go dig up that template and attach it to an email, right? And it was just, it was something that stopped me and slowed me down every time. So here I don't have to worry about that anymore. I said, wow, I can attach a template. Boom, I'm doing this in 17 Hats. Then, of course, so I give them the template, but then, of course, I do what getting their email address in the first place is sort of designed to do, was I want to sell to them, right? Look, I'm going to give you the free template, but I'm also going to take advantage of the opportunity to offer you my other resources where you might hire me, right? That's usually what the deal is. When I give you something for free in exchange for your email, it's, in a sense, for the permission to sell you something later on, right? And people can, people can opt out. This isn't really even an opt-out thing. This is just a one-time email that's going out. And then again, I repeat their name. People like to, it's subliminal in a lot of cases, but people do like to hear their name mentioned. This works in verbal conversation, and it works in print as well. So I repeat their name down here, have a fantastic day. And then, of course, I made sure my signature was here with another reminder of all the resources that they can take advantage of with me. So that email goes out in that workflow. All my amazing unsaved work will be lost. That's fine. So that email goes out initially. Let me go back to the workflow now, because then what happens is a day later, another email goes out. And I want to show you what that one's all about. So if I go back into the inventory template workflow, notice here, this one gets sent out 2 days after all previous items are complete. So this one goes out, again, with the template they requested attached, and then it gives them 2 days to kind of mull it over, use it, whatever. Hopefully they get into it right away. And then 2 days later, this next email goes out. So let's go back to my templates, and I'll show you what template number 2 looks like. And template number 2, it's going to be my last effort at reaching out to them. So here I'm going to lay it on a little thick in terms of the, upsells and things. So here's inventory tracking email number 2. And notice how I name things so it's easy to find, because as you can see, the list of email templates is going to accumulate, especially as you build more and more workflows. So it's really important to take the time to name these things well so that you can find them. I haven't looked at this template in a long time. This is a set it and forget it thing, but right in front of you right here, and I promise you I did not prepare this part specifically, but I was able to find it very quickly. So again, I'm addressing them by name, and here I say, I just want to make sure you got the template I sent you. Now the reason I can get away with this is most people don't reply and say thank you. Some people do. But most people do not send a reply and say, hey, got the template, thank you. So I realized that almost gave me an excuse to send them a follow-up email and say, hey, I just want to make sure you got the template, right? I'm attaching it again, and I did, just in case. And I'm also including another version I made a year after the original. See if you like this one better. So now I'm giving them right off the top another reason to engage with this email. So now this is more marketing than workflow, but I want to give you kind of I want to get your juices flowing in terms of ideas that you can take away from today and things that you can do with the information I'm providing to both increase workflow and grow your business. So this is important to me. So again, I address them by first name, and I'm trying to get their attention here, like just an afterthought here, but just in case I thought you might like to check out some of my other resources. And then I go and I link them to the webinars that I've done. Obviously, these are people who are concerned with inventory. So I link them to some of the webinars that I sell for $147 in my knowledge store and my, on schoolofanswers.com. And then I just give them some more information about other ways to get help with me, one-on-one sessions, boom, boom, boom. And then here I put in a testimonial from a client, which was a tremendous success. I mean, he actually voluntarily went out and put this out there, and he showed me this article because after working with him in a series of 20 hours of sessions, I was able to get his books cleaned up to the point where he was able to use those books to line up financing to purchase a facility for $500,000. So, it was a great example of how my work directly impacted his business and helped him grow. So I throw that in there again as another, sort of upsell and motivation. So that's that's one example of one workflow that I use that, going through it kind of slowly, it's a few minutes, but the reality is in practice now, as soon as I get the lead gen form filled out and they come into 17 Hats as a lead, it takes me 2 seconds to look at the comments. As soon as I see inventory template, boom, I assign the workflow and I'm done. And then the web goes to work for me and sends out those 2 emails. And I've had some people respond, and I've had a few people sign up. So look, if one person signs up for a one-on-one session with me as a result of the effort I put in to create that workflow, it's just paid for the time and then some. So it's worth it. Now let me show you the bigger picture workflow stuff. And then real quick, I'll show you the contact form, how they get into 17 Hats, because I'm sure people are wondering that now. So over on SethDavid.com, and I had realized a couple weeks ago that I had accidentally removed this when I was trying to clean up the navigation, but it's here, about or contact. If you go right to the Contact Me page, you'll see the form that I created with 17 Hats and embedded right here on this page. All right, and things are a little slow because I'm streaming for you guys, but here it is. And notice how simple I keep it. The only things that are required are name, email, and phone number. I want to make sure I can reach them, and in case there's a typo in the email, there's a good chance the phone number is right. So I require both, right? Company's optional. Even how can I help you is optional, although it would be a little weird to me if they didn't at least say a couple of words about why they're reaching out to me. And so this is it. I saw a conversation go on in one of our Facebook groups recently where people were talking about what they asked for in this initial contact, and people were talking about like these long questionnaires that they have, and I'm like, no, you're going to lose people, on the first touch. After the fact, when you've already established communication and established their interest, then you can go into a more detailed questionnaire with them. But on that first contact, when people are moving fast, if you ask for too much information, they're going to fly. They're not going to stick with you.
Seth, I have a quick question. On the name field, how do you get that? Is that like one field or is that like 2 fields? I mean, if you want to have their first name and their last name in your database.
The way 17 Hats works when you set up these forms is it just gives you the ability to take the whole name in one field. But I believe based on the space, it then in the back end divides it up between first and last.
Okay.
So if somebody puts in their full name with their middle name, which again would be kind of weird to me, I think most people would tend to just put first space last. That might screw you up a little bit. But the bottom line is you're likely getting the first name first. I don't think I've ever seen a case where somebody put their last name, comma, their first name, which is a very old school way of presenting names, if you remember. Like from when I was a kid, I remember that's how people would do it. So this form is generated within 17 Hats, and then I get the embed code and drop that in here. Now, the course walks you through how to set that up. Right? I don't have time to go into that today. So that comes in, and then the leads show up over here. A notification goes out to both Erica and myself. And we can come in and manage these leads. I can click on Dan and see what he's asking for. If he's asked for the template, then I would just want to show you how easy this is. I click on his new lead project. And then over here is workflows. I click on the plus sign, and inventory template is right there if that's what I want to assign. Notice I have other workflows, though, like client onboarding and so on, and that's what I'm going to show you next. So the whole this is sort of dependent upon the whole process, the lead gen process really being handled through 17 Hats. They come in through the 17 Hats form that gets them into the 17 Hats ecosystem, and then from there I can assign the appropriate workflow. And there's more that Eric and I do, which I'm going to go back to this when I get into Nimble. And I do need to move a little fast because we have a lot to cover here. So luckily it's being recorded, and of course I'm always available for questions after the fact. So if I don't get to your questions, I apologize. But I do want to make sure I cover everything that I meant to cover today. So let's go back into my workflow templates. Again, the account settings is where you'll find those. We go into my, actually, sorry, let me stick with the workflows for a minute. Go over to the templates here. So client onboarding. This is kind of the big one. And here, now you've kind of seen how to get to and from the template. So I'm not going to do that throughout this whole workflow. I just want to show you what my onboarding workflow looks like. And I want to explain a little bit about how this evolved. It didn't look like this originally. And the first thing I did, and I had this in my notes to discuss with you this morning, is before you can establish any kind of workflow, whether it's a 17 Hats workflow or it's more of a bigger picture workflow in the workplace, how do I handle this process where I'm experiencing friction? The first thing to do is not going to be in 17 Hats or any other like sort of application per se. The first thing to do is whip out a Word document or a Google document and start outlining bullet points. What are the steps? What has to happen at each step of the way? And you have to get real granular. Because initially I set up my workflow in 17 Hats with really the high level big picture in mind, and I realized there are a lot of little steps in between that I was missing. And it was really important, so I had to change that. And ultimately what you're seeing here evolved, and this is a specific workflow just for business management clients. Business management clients are clients who outsource their entire accounting process to me. Right? So the first thing that happens is the client says to me, and by now they've probably filled out the contact form. If not, I've asked them to so that I can start this process. And they get a welcome email. That email goes out. And it gives them kind of a description of, here's what's going to happen. And I learned that that's important because clients get confused, right? So this email actually outlines step by step with a lot of bullet points. Here's what's going to happen. Here's what we're going to need from you. And then the next thing that happens is the next day I have to approve it because I have to go in and alter the contract sometimes to, change the language based on whatever specifics we may have discussed prior to starting the workflow. So after approval, notice it's marked to be approved, the contract will go out. And 17 Hats handles the contract signing beautifully. It's just so slick, where it does the electronic signatures, and the client gets a login where they can print out a copy of it and save it as a PDF if they want to, or they can log in at any time and review the contract. It's always there in 17 Hats, which I love. As soon as the contract has been signed, I have 17 Hats programmed to automatically countersign it on my behalf. Never sign a contract first, because then you're kind of locked in if the client makes any changes, right? You have to leave yourself open to make sure you can agree on any changes they've asked for. So it does give you the option to sign it initially. I don't recommend taking that option. And by the way, one of my 17 Hats lessons, and this one is actually free, is a lesson that I do actually logged in Zoom with my attorney. And we go through a process where he kind of walks all of you through, how he reviews these contracts that I create in 17 Hats to make sure, and it's obviously highly recommended that you do have an attorney review your contract before you start having clients sign them. So I think that lesson's free. If you go into the lessons and access that and watch the video, I don't believe there's a password on there. If you do and you find that there is, let me know. I will be happy to free that up. But I believe I meant to keep that one as a free lesson for people because I thought it was really important. Next, we're going to a series of check boxes, things that I have to do internally. Now that I've got the contract signed, an email automatically goes out to capture their payment. This links to a product that I have at School of Answers in WooCommerce, right, where they set up a subscription. So they're going to pay me, as you can see, the fee for this is $1,500 a month. That's what I charge for the basic business management service. Once they've signed the contract, they get the email. As soon as the payment comes in, I get notified. Now I have to get to work. I have to add them to Nimble. They're likely already in Nimble, so this is just a double check to make sure. And because I'm going to go over the process, how the clients get into Nimble a little bit later on when I get to that part of this morning. I set up Google Drive, set up box.com. I do keep files for clients in both of these, and then set up Smartsheet. And I'm going to show you what I do in Smartsheet with clients in a few minutes. And then once I've established that all these have been set up, a lot of, in some of the cases, the clients are going to get an invite, like for Box, not Google Drive. That's more of an internal thing that we use. But Box is generally going to get shared with the client, so they're going to get an invite. And Smartsheet, I'm definitely sharing with the client, so they're going to get an invite. As soon as I check off this last step, an email goes out to the client automatically. I do have to approve it. I did set it that way because I want to make sure, in case I need to tweak the language based on anything maybe unique or different I set up for a particular client, I need to give myself the opportunity to address that. But once I approve it, an email goes out, again, explaining to the client, hey, you probably just got some invites. Here's what's going on. And it lays it out step by step for them so they understand. So this is a huge time saver in terms of workflow optimization. 17 Hats, that kind of is the point of the 17 Hats product. And that's why I spent a lot of time on it and wanted to show you this first, because this is the product where whenever there's a series of steps that can be automated in terms of just communications, emails going back and forth, checklists, contracts to sign, 17 Hats is built for that and absolutely, in my opinion, should be employed for that purpose. And there's a lot of little processes you'll find out. Like initially, I didn't get it for the inventory template. I got it for this, but I realized, hey, I can use 17 Hats to solve that inventory template problem. And there's other things I've uncovered along the way that 17 Hats has been a huge help and time saver with. All right, I want to move on though because I have a lot more to cover, but I did want to spend most of the time today on 17 Hats because it's such a core workflow app. I mean, that's what it's built to do. So next, let's talk about Evernote. So we talked about email. Let me open up my email real quick. And I'm going to pull it off screen for a second, obviously, just to make sure there's nothing sort of confidential showing up here. And I'm just going to find one email to bring on screen and show you. The quick answer on this is, when you get your Evernote account set up, you get a special email address that you can forward emails to. And that causes that email to show up in Evernote. And as my email's loading, let me just find something here. Okay, great, perfect. So let me bring this up. I probably should close a few tabs. I'm sure that's slowing things down a little bit. So here's an email I got from Twitter letting me know that Nimble liked my tweet. In fact, it was the tweet sort of announcing this very webinar. So let's say I want to follow up on this. Let's say I want to remember to, and I would normally never do this for something like this because I have another process in the bigger picture where I check Twitter regularly. So I know anybody mentions me or likes a tweet of mine, I already have a process built into my day that's going to make sure that I address things like this. But let's say I wanted to make sure I made a specific point of following up on this. I hit my forward option. And what I've done is I've added that special Evernote email in as a contact. So it takes 2 seconds. I type EVE, and basically it's there. Hit the tab key and hit send. Now, a lot of you, I mentioned earlier, use Boomerang. Boomerang lets you kind of send those emails back to yourself at a future date. So if you know you wanted to follow up on that later today or tomorrow, you could use Boomerang to have Boomerang, send it back to you so you could get it out of your inbox. Here's the thing, though. What's going to happen next is I'm in my action pending notebook in Evernote. Let me sync up. And while we're here, I'm going to change my view. And sync again. It can take a minute at times, of course, depending on email servers. And let me just make sure that that did get sent. So that'll probably come through in another minute. Usually it's almost instant. And I'm not sure with an email like that doesn't have attachments, why that would take more than a minute. But again, everything's kind of running slow on my machine now because I'm streaming all this video and I've got a lot of stuff running for you. So the next thing that happens is, so I go through my emails and anything I need to follow up on, I forward to Evernote. And then the next thing that happens is I go into Evernote, and Evernote, like I said, can be configured. I may not have said this yet, but it can be configured with a default notebook. And here's my action pending notebook. It's inside of a stack called Cabinet. Very easy to create this stuff. I can create a new stack. I can add a notebook. I can right-click Cabinet and create a notebook in the Cabinet stack. So action pending is in that stack, and this represents, as the name suggests, anything where I have to do some kind of follow-up where there's an action pending. And if I scroll to the right here, here's my tags. And if I sort by tag, what happens is, notice, there's just a handful of stuff I forwarded into Evernote recently that need to be tagged. So again, this is my workflow in Evernote. Now I just have to go through and tag these things for follow-up. And you'll see I've got here's a signed contract from a client of mine, right? So I'm going to tag this with the client's name, and I'm going to tag this with the tag follow-up. And then what happens is down below, I have saved searches so that the next time I'm scheduled on my calendar to work on that particular client, I click the appropriate follow-up search, right? Here's follow-up for Pace Compumetrics. That's one of my clients. I'm not going to click this because there's obviously confidential stuff in here. But if I click this, it would bring up a queue of just those notes that I've tagged for follow-up with Pace. Now, the difference between that and Boomerang is once it's in Evernote, it's a note. It's a digital notepad. I can take notes on it. I don't know about you, but a lot of times I'll have an email that I'll star for follow-up instead of forwarding it, or just otherwise, if I use something like Boomerang that's just going to send it back to me, by the time it comes back to me, I'm going to have no clue why I wanted to be reminded of this thing, even necessarily with the email's content itself. But having it in Evernote, I can write a note to myself. When I was an auditor years ago, we used to have this thing we did it was a worksheet called Notes to Future Auditors, right? And it's my version of that. It's like notes to my future self. This is what I need to remember to do when the time comes to follow up on this thing. And here's a thing I did on BQE blog topics, which was a forward that came in. So this, of course, I can show you. So I'd tag this BQE software and follow up. You see how easy that is. So now it's going to show up in that queue. But the other thing I can do is if I know already here that the next time I'm going to be working on BQE stuff is, let's say, next Tuesday, then I just established the reminder for Tuesday. Now, this is going to do two things. The first thing it's going to do when I go into my action pending and I look at my snippet view, it brings up, this little queue right here, which can be sort of zipped up. These are all the things that are in my action pending notebook that have been tagged with some kind of a reminder. And I can do a reminder with a date, which is what you're seeing first. And as I scroll down, you'll get to where I have notes with reminders that didn't have a date. I just wanted them to show up in this queue, so I tagged them with a reminder, right? So as I scroll down, you'll see that. And of course, you'll see today's notes here. Let me scroll back up. Here, so down here are all the notes that have been tagged, added, that have had a reminder added to them, which which I didn't include a date on. And then as I go up, I'll find the ones with the date. So sure enough, you'll find in here, there's a note, and I don't know why it's jumping down on me like that. Let me go back up quickly. You'll find there's a note in here that's going to say just today. So that really helps. This one is my notes on optimizing workflow that, that I established for today with today's notes. So Evernote is a huge workflow time saver for me. It is the tool that I use to manage my emails. And again, this is a process that I have. So if nothing else, every Sunday I clear out my inbox, forwarding anything to Evernote that requires any follow-up, and archiving anything that doesn't. I used to use labels in Google and Gmail. I don't use the labels anymore. I don't need to, because the reality is the search works so well that if I'm looking for something, I'm just going to do a search. And when I use those emails forwarded to Evernote to follow up, if and when the time comes that I need to go back to the original email to reply, all I have to do is, because I have the email headers in the note, is I copy and paste the subject line into the search in my Gmail, and in 2 seconds that email is going to come up. Most of the time, the subjects are fairly unique. So it's very quick and easy to find things that way. So that's the Evernote process. And I've got videos out there already on YouTube that go over this in much greater detail. Now let's get into Smartsheet. Do we have a question?
So you don't use folders in Evernote? You just use the tags?
I do. No, I do create categories. I set up an automatic category filter so that based on who sends it to me, it will filter it for that client. So I'll have a Pace Compumetrics label in Gmail, and I just create the rules that anytime I get an email from somebody where the email address is at pacecompumetrics.com, it will automatically assign that label so that all I have to do when I'm done with the email in the inbox is hit the archive button. So I will do that much. But I used to go a lot more crazy with the labels in Gmail. The reality is if it's getting to the point where I need to do that, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to forward it to Evernote and use tags in Evernote to create the follow-up, indicators and workflow that I need there.
So, but in Evernote, you don't use folders.
I use tags a lot. I do use some, well, not folders, but they're notebooks, I think is what you mean.
Yeah.
No, I used to have a separate notebook for each client. I stopped doing that. When I reviewed, and I know Joanne's familiar with this, the Dave Allen Getting Things Done process, he has a series of videos where he goes over how to set up Evernote accordingly. And I learned from that it's actually more efficient to just use tags. So every client has a tag based on their name. And so, because then in a flash, I can do a query in Evernote of just the tag for the client's name, and I've got everything for that client right there. In a few cases, I'll do both. Sorry?
No, I've just been doing basically the same process into Asana, but this sounds much better. Thanks.
You got it. Yeah, and again, Asana, I found as I accumulated a lot of stuff, I was having trouble finding things in Asana. I couldn't remember where to go to find them. So that's why I said, like I said in the beginning, I ultimately sort of left Asana and landed back on Active Collab and then Evernote for this kind of process. Absolutely. Okay, so now Smartsheet. I want to show you the client reference sheet that Erica and I use with every single client. I've created a generic version of this. Now, some of you are already going to say, oh, but I have HubDoc for this. The problem is HubDoc doesn't handle everything. HubDoc doesn't handle the IT bill, the one-off IT bill that I get from my client who, HubDoc, they don't have a login. HubDoc has no way to pull that in, right? And the reality is, even if with HubDoc, even with the automation that can be done with QuickBooks Online, I have found it, and I think Erica will attest to this, I found it very handy to create this workflow in Smartsheet, where part of the onboarding process with my clients is that I get them to give me the names of every vendor, and sometimes what I'll do is I'll go into QuickBooks and I'll run an expenses by vendor summary totaled by month, so I can see who are I can quickly visualize where are the monthly payments that need to be managed to make sure that nothing gets paid late. And so we create this worksheet in Smartsheet. Smartsheet, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, just think spreadsheet plus project management married together and on steroids. That's the best way I can sum up in an elevator pitch what Smartsheet is to me. And because it has very, very robust project management features. So I use the example of Verizon Wireless. I'm going to put the URL where we go to log in. I have the next due date for whatever the last bill is that was cut. And then the next statement date that's going to cut after that. And here's how this works. So let's say the next statement date has passed. Let's say the next statement date was actually yesterday. Notice what happens. As soon as the date of today goes past the next statement date, this lights up in red and yellow. It lets Erica and I know that we need to make sure, it's time to make sure that this bill is not going to be paid late. Now we're going by the statement date because there's always some time between then. Because what happens often is even though the statement date might be 9/15, we don't get the statement in the mail or our client doesn't get it to us until a day before it's due, and then it's very hard to get it paid on time, right? And the next thing is we have this column here that says what's on manual pay versus what's been set up on auto pay. If it says auto pay, then it's not as much of a priority because auto pay means I've gone into Verizon Wireless, I've configured automatic payments so that Verizon will automatically take the full amount that's due on the bill out of the client's bank account. And of course, we get the client's permission to set all this up. And again, with business management clients who are paying $1,500 a month, these clients typically have the cash flow to support, the ability to just pay the bills and not have to worry about it. Right? If cash flow is an issue, then of course I'll bring Bill.com into the mix and use that so we can manage the cash flow there and only select to be paid the things that we really have the cash to pay. But I try and avoid going to the expensive Bill.com if I can, and this in Smartsheet often solves that problem. Because then the next thing that's going to happen is we're going to get alerts sent to us. Right? So I'm going to create an alert. I'm going to say new reminder. Now reminders are always date-based. So I'm going to have it send both Erica and I an alert on not the due date, but the next statement date. And I'll save that. So what this is going to do today, it's obviously too late to do that, but as soon as any line item in this sheet hits as soon as today's date hits the next statement date on any line item in the sheet, we're going to get an email that morning with basically a cutout of this whole worksheet, and things are going to be highlighted in yellow wherever something needs our attention. So it's my trap. It's my way of assuring that nothing's going to get missed. Right. The other thing we do, and the clients love this because, again, this is shared with the clients, is I have their bank accounts set up here. Every 2 days, I key in their current balance, right? So that's going to be an alert based on the balances checked, where I'm going to say 2 days after this date, send me a reminder. And that reminder is going to have me come in here, log into their bank account, check their balances, and I key in their current balance. And we always have a prudent reserve established so that if in a case like this, we're well under the prudent reserve, this lets me know we need to call the client and tell them, hey, we're running short on funds. Right? Big, big, big time saver to do this. And it takes 2 seconds. I get the email in the morning. I see, okay, it's time to update the balances for this client. I click over. The login information is tracked right here. Right in the comments, I'll have the login info. So I click on the link to log in. I can copy and paste the login info right out of here in Smartsheet, log into their bank, update their balance, drop it in, and see if anything needs our attention. And if not, then I just update these dates. Balances were checked today on the 16th. Save it. The client's going to get an alert, because the other thing we do in the alerts is I do a new notification. And let's say Erica was the client in this case. What I would do is I would configure it to go to Erica once a day whenever anything changes. I don't want to overwhelm the client by doing it right away or even every hour, right? But this way the client will get a daily digest showing them anything that happened in this worksheet. It accomplishes a few things. A, it reassures the client that we're actually doing our job. And B, it clues the client into things that we may need their help with. What's more with Smartsheet, let's say I get a security question on the savings account when I go to log in, or it would probably be on the whole Wells Fargo account. But I go to log in, I get a security question I don't have the answer to. I highlight the entire row, I click Update Request, create New Request, I send it to Erica, and I say, need security question answered. Right? And of course, I'll copy and paste in the actual security question. Erica will get an email. Now, let's say you have the kind of client who doesn't tend to be very responsive to these sorts of things. There's a solution. So notice down here where it says Delivery Send Now, I'll click Edit, and I'll say Send it daily, weekdays only, no end in sight. It starts today, every day at 9 a.m. I want this reminder going out to them until I get my answer. Otherwise, if I don't get my response, what can happen is I can't log into the bank account. I can't do the updates I need. I can't pay their bills for them if I need to, because I can't get into their bank account. So I don't mind annoying them with that daily reminder until I get what I need. And what I don't want to have to do is remember to follow up myself by email every day. So there's a workflow process that's now been automated that otherwise every day I'd have to stop and check. Did I get my answer? Oh, no, I didn't get my answer. Okay, let me write out another email. Right? And those little things add up and take time. So that's my Smartsheet process. Real quick, a lot of us talk about social media. Joanne's going to love this part. Erica and I have created it. This has truly become Erica's brainchild. I started this, and Erica has taken it so much further and made it so nice. But here's our social media master plan, which we also manage in Smartsheet. And this contains essentially a log of everything I've ever published anywhere on the internet. And so we have it broken down in categories, and Erica has now broken it down in terms of where are we going to post this stuff, because now we've begun to outline a different strategy for each social channel. And based on that, we want different posts going to different social channels. So over here, we've kind of grouped the posts within each social channel. It looks like Erica made change. See, even while we're in this webinar, Erica's here working. So again, this is another great thing, and this is another thing, of course, I can work with you all on to show you how you can set this up. But it's pretty straightforward. We just created the columns. We've got the title, the URL of the post. We grabbed the short URL using any URL shortener, the post text. If we want to make sure that somebody's mentioned because we discussed their tool, and ultimately we come up with the actual post, which is going to go onto Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever. And then out here, we check the length to make sure it's less than 140 for Twitter. right? And this is really simple to set up, and then it's just a matter of maintaining it. And for those of you who are contributors on Between Will and Main, you've seen another version of this that I've created for you there, which Erica also keeps up to date for you. That one's not quite as robust as this, doesn't need to be. So that's another process that we do in terms of managing social media workflows that we handle using Smartsheet. Let's quickly jump over to Active Collab. I know I only have a few minutes left, but I've gotten through most of it. So Active Collab, I'm going to just show you the bottom line point blank reason why I love Active Collab, and it comes down to the reports. Active Collab is project management software. I can create a project, I can assign it to a client, so I can manage the very high level information about who the client is, their address, email, that kind of stuff. Not a lot of details, which is why I had to take that other client out of here. We need much more detailed information on the clients themselves, so we put them into Smartsheet. But in the reports area, I'll just go to the tasks reports, and I'm going to show tasks due by project. And this is what so many other project management apps lack, is the ability to see across all projects what's due, what needs to get done, right? And you can see I've got projects for each client. So I've got Nerd Main, which is kind of my own internal stuff that I want to keep track of, things that I need to do. You know, and there's so much in here that's so robust. When I go into a project, I'll go into my main projects just so you can see what it looks like from the inside. And bear with me, I'm almost done, and then I want to mention the thing that I said was going to be a surprise at the end. So I can go with a view that's a lot like Trello in Active Collab, which means I can quickly and easily drag and move things from one pile to the other, so to speak. And these are really lists. And in this view, I have direct access to the lists, and these are the tasks. And I can go into any task, and I can keep track of anything I'd ever want to about a task. Yes, you can do recurring tasks. I can quickly select here and move it to, you know, from one list to the other from here. I have the assignee, the due date. I can assign labels and then use labels to report on things or filter by label. Here's a subscriber. I can add a reminder here, which might be separate from the due date. I might want a reminder 2 days before the due date. Hey, this is coming due. You better get this done, right? And then, of course, we can write comments. I can mention Erica, so that she's notified, you know, that I need her help on something, right? And we can add subtasks, and subtasks can be assigned a distinct assignee. So you could have the main task assigned to me, but I could have subtasks assigned to Erica, so that once Erica's done with all her subtasks, then I know I've got the ball now to finish the task off. So, and there's also videos on Active Collab. So any of these apps that you're seeing so far, if you go into SethDavid.com and go to the apps area, it's broken up alphabetically. You'll find Active Collab, you'll find Smartsheet, 17 Hats, I've got the whole course. I want to quickly show you something about Nimble CRM that I think this alone is going to kind of get you sold on Nimble. And it's not that I'm trying to sell you per se, I just want you to see why I love it as much as I do. So let's say I go into Dan Zisco here. Now, Nimble has an extension for Chrome, which we've installed. And Erica is in Nimble as a user. So when we get a new lead, one of the first things Erica is going to do when she gets the notification from Nimble, she's going to come in here, and it's probably better to do this version of his name. Notice what happens. If I highlight his name, he's probably too new, so we haven't added him yet. But you see what Nimble does? It finds him, and it says, add to Nimble. Let me see if I can find somebody who would already be in Nimble, because I want you to see how cool this is and what this looks like. So let's go. Nick actually is one of my new friends. I'm very certain that he's already in here. So let's highlight Nick's name. And boom, it comes right up with Nick's profile. And I can click on his name. So I know a lot of you like to use Untitled because it combines CRM with project management. This is just my opinion. I think it does half the job of each. Whereas here I have project management software, and this works in Smartsheet too. Let's go over to Smartsheet, and let me just go into a clean task list. And I'll just put in the task name, Nick Orlando. Let's bring up the Nimble widget. And initially, it's going to source the URL that you're on. Okay, but let me now go in and highlight Nick's name here. And boom, there's Nick Orlando. It finds him. So you have the best of all worlds here, because you have an app that handles CRM really well. And you have a workflow tool like 17 Hats that handles that really well. And as you just saw, I can also use this to any cloud-based app I can use with the Nimble widget alongside, so I can quickly access that contact. And I can go and I can do some stuff right from here, or I can click on Nick's name and take it right into his whole profile in Nimble. Now, I want to show you something else I did the other day in Nimble that's really cool.
Hey, Seth, can I ask you a quick question while you're in Nimble?
Real quick, because I'm over time.
Okay. Well, no, I'm just wondering, as far as with the CRM, does Nimble kind of, can you put that through like the process of like where you are with that particular potential lead or anything like that? Or is that what you use the 17 Hats for?
You can assign deals, which is where every CRM has that deal feature where you can do what you're describing.
Okay.
I never use that feature in any CRM. I feel like I feel like that becomes friction where I have to decide, is he 25% likely? Is he 75% likely? To me, either a lead is going to convert or they're not. And either they're hot or cold. And speaking of, that kind of brings us to what I wanted to show you here. So when I go to my contacts and I go into Nimble, watch what I can do. First of all, I love tags because I don't have to pay per tag. Tags don't cost me anything. So I'm going to go to my prospects tag here, which, Eric and I built it into our workflow. When a lead comes in through 17 Hats, you saw how easy it is. We highlight their name, we can add them to Nimble in a click, and then we assign the tag prospects. So now I've got my contact list sorted. I have 33 sort of active prospects here. Now I can sort by last contacted. And I just did this the other day. It was so cool. So, and the reason why there's nobody more than 30 days since contacted, because I just did what I'm going to demonstrate for you here. So let's say I want to take anybody who's more than a couple of weeks since they've been last contacted, right? So I just select these guys. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a group message. But watch this. So now I have templates. So I'm going to select a template. I have a template here that I've created called It's Been a Little While. I'll proceed. It uses a merge tag, so it's going to address them by first name, and it's just some language that I wrote out in a generic way that says, hey, I'm up late, is usually looking over some of my order history. I know it's been a while since I've helped you out, right? That's actually for people I've already worked with. So here's last contacted 1 month. Proceed. Again, just a quick ping to see how things are going, if there's anything I can do for you. So and what this is going to do is it's not like MailChimp where it sends out a broadcast email. This is going to send individual emails. It's linked to my Google Apps email, my Gmail account. So it's going to send individual emails to each of these people. And it's going to insert their first name, and it's going to put in this generic language. So instead of sending out 10, 15 separate emails, which can take time, in a few clicks, I can email the whole lot of people who haven't been contacted in more than 30 days who've been defined as prospects. And this is why I love Nimble, because it's so smart the way they've built in this infrastructure. So now what I've done in the past hour is I've gone over bookmarks, 17 Hats, Evernote, Smartsheet, Active Collab, CRM, and Nimble. Or Nimble being the CRM. So here's what I want to do, because I know it's like drinking from the fire hose. And it's a lot to absorb, and good thing is you can get the recording of this. I'm going to make sure I have this one up by tomorrow. Sometimes it takes me longer, but for the reasons that I'm about to divulge, I'm going to make sure this is available tomorrow first thing so you can review it. And then I'm going to do two things. I want to make you all an offer. And I normally never do this in these. Those of you who've been with me for years know this is probably the first time I've ever done something like this. But I really saw how compelling this topic was and how clearly a lot of people are looking for help with it. So the first thing I'm going to do is a series. It's basically 4 videos in 4 days for $40. And I'm going to give you a link in a minute where you can go sign up for that. And if you do, you pay $40, and starting on Monday, you're going to get 1 video a day for 4 days. The first is a deep dive on Evernote. The second is a deep dive on Smartsheet. The third is a deep dive on Nimble. And the fourth is a deep dive on 17 Hats, specifically around the lead generation stuff. You can get that in the course too, but I'm going to give you kind of a new, fresh look at developing your lead generation workflow in 17 Hats. So that's the first thing I want to offer. I'm going to drop this in the chat, and if any of you miss it somehow, then by all means reach out to me, and I'll make sure that you can get it. Let me just make sure this is going to everyone here. So there it is. 4 videos, 4 days, $40. 4 hours of video roughly. They'll probably be about an hour each. These, like I said, these are going to be deep dives on each of these applications. The next thing I'm going to do is I mentioned that I used to do this practice development deep dive. So what I've got now, I did away with that sort of particular thing because I felt there were too many choices in schoolofanswers.com. But So I wanted to simplify it. So I have a 5-hour plan, which is kind of what I use now when somebody wants this kind of deep dive with me, where it's basically, it's 5 hours of time. So we schedule an hour session. The first session is a bit of discovery. We go through your practice and identify where those frictions are. And then based on that, which applications that I've used that I think I can help you with. And then I work with you on the implementation. I work with you on getting those applications up and running and in your business. We'll address concerns like how do I get my employees to buy in and all that kind of stuff. I've dealt with this many, many, many times over. So to address that need, what I'm offering is, and by the way, and I hate to do this, but I know if I don't, you guys are all going to procrastinate on this. So these offers are only good till Monday. Okay, so you got to act fast. So on the second one, I'm going to paste this in the chat. And this is basically 15% off on the 5-hour plan. The 5-hour plan is $1,100. A single hour with me is $250. So you're already saving money there. I'm going to let you take another 15% off. I've dropped the link into the chat with the coupon code so that you can get 15% off on a 5-hour plan with me, and we can get to work right away. Once you've paid for that, you'll get an email confirmation with a link to schedule your first session with me so that I can start going through this stuff a lot slower and in much greater depth so that we can get this kind of stuff, so that we can solve these kind of problems for you and get the applications in service that are going to help you make your workflow better optimized, if not fully optimized. Any questions? Okay.
Which are the 4 apps that you're going to be covering?
Well, in the 4 videos, it's Evernote, Smartsheet, Nimble, and 17 Hats.
Okay, thank you.
So somebody's asking, where's the second link? I just dropped it. It should be there in the chat. I'll drop both in there one more time. So somebody's asking, why no active collab? I had to pick 4. And I do have videos on active collab that you can watch already in SethDavid.com. I don't have as much on these other applications. I do have some on Evernote, but this Evernote's going to go into much more detail. But you know what? Since you asked for it, I'll throw in the bonus, and I'll add active collab. So that makes it 5 videos for $40. I'm not even going to charge you any extra. And I've just added that into my notes. So there you go. So now we'll do active collab. That means I got to get busy this weekend recording videos, but that's not a problem. That's what I love to do more than anything else. So I'll be doing that all day tomorrow. Once you've signed up, you'll get the first email on Monday. So it'll be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and now Friday. So actually, that's perfect because you'll get an email every day next week with another video that you can use to review these applications in detail. So again, you have 2 options here. You can take advantage of both. 5 videos in 4 days for $40. It's going to be about 4 hours now, maybe almost 5 hours worth of video. And then the 15% off on a deep dive with me, my 5-hour plan. You've got the coupon code. Take 15% off. Once you put that coupon code in, update the cart. It'll check you out with the discount applied, and then you'll get the email with the link to schedule your first session with me.
Seth, on the 5-hour plan, do we have to book it right away?
No, you don't have to book it right away. You can book it whenever you want.
Does it have to be on this stuff?
No, you can use it however you want. That's fine.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You got it.
Thanks for those discounts.
You bet. You bet. I hope I don't lose too many people in the extra time, but I'll send an email out to everybody letting them know what I've offered and the fact that it's only good till Monday. Because like I said, I know you all are a bunch of procrastinators and you won't do it if I leave it open. All right, guys.
Seth,
Yes.
those videos, are we able to review them repeatedly, or are they limited?
Yeah. You're going to be able to download them. It's going to be an MP4. So you're going to get an email with a link to download the video. It's yours forever.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. All right. Anybody else before I run? And for those of you viewers who came in late that I couldn't add in live, I apologize. I was just, I knew I was going to be busy today.
Thanks for a great session.
You bet. I hope it was useful, and I hope you learned some stuff. And again, any questions, you know how to reach me. I'm very easy to find, very accessible, and I usually get back to you within 24 hours.
Thanks. I love the drinking from the fire hose.
Yep. All right.
Infinity Coding Zone.